My name is Ioana Negulescu. I'm head of creative innovation at Articulate Marketing. And I work kind of at the intersection of design and the science that makes design effective. I'm very interested in cognitive psychology, experience design, and human-centered design. So hopefully I will be sharing some of my knowledge to help you build presentations that are more memorable and more effective. In 2007, Jobs introduced a product that changed the world. And his entire deck had fewer words than most single slides that we see during a presentation. There are still absolutely no bullet points in an Apple keynote, not a single one ever. And this was not a style choice. It was actually a decision that was rooted in understanding how attention and memory actually work. So today is about understanding the same thing and building differently because of it. This number is not an exaggeration. 35 million presentations every single day. Deals are closed in presentations, strategies are approved in presentations. But here's the good news. Every one of those 35 million daily presentations is our competition. And almost all of them are terrible. So the bar is pretty low. And a few changes based on how the brain actually works and you're immediately in a different category. The purpose here is not to give you just a checklist, but it's giving you the understanding of how the brain works during a presentation so that every single decision you make in the build comes from that understanding. So let's start with the brain. Can you write down the words you remember from the previous slide? I assume you might remember 1 or 2 or 3. You know, this is not bad memory. It is actually human memory. And every single person watching this just hit exactly the same ceiling. For decades, we believed that we could hold 7 things in our head at once, plus minus 2, so let's make that even more complicated. It turns out that study that was from 1956 and that stuck around for about 50 years was wrong. Then a memory researcher came around and ran the numbers again, properly this time. It turns out it is not 7 things that we can remember. It is between 3 to 5 things. So now, think about your last slide deck. You've got probably a heading, a subheading, 4 bullets, a paragraph, an image. That's already 8 or 9 things fighting for the 3 to 5 slots. No wonder nobody remembers presentations. And this is not an attention problem. It is not that people do not care about what you are saying, because they do. It is that you have accidentally built a traffic jam inside their brain. And the solution is not to speak louder or more enthusiastically or to add more slides. It is to put less on each of the slides. Give the brain something that it can actually hold. Bullet points on slides are not as efficient as simple text. Counterintuitive, right? Let's look at the studies. So there's a study from 2013 where the researcher took 110 engineering students and split them into 2 groups. They saw the exact same presentation, the same presenter, the same room, same everything. Group 1 saw normal slides, topic headings with bullet lists, basically what most of us build most of the time. Group 2 saw something different. Each of the slides in group 2 had 1 sentence stating the point, backed by a single piece of visual evidence with absolutely no bullet points. The group that saw bullet points had way more on the screen, more text, more words, more content. But they didn't understand more. They didn't remember more. They actually performed worse on absolutely each one of these measures. So comprehension, misconceptions, cognitive load they delayed the recall, all of it. More words on a slide doesn't create more understanding. It actually just creates the illusion of thoroughness while delivering less understanding. In a second study, students built the slides themselves to teach a topic to other students. Half of the group built bullet slides and half built the same as before. So one single argument as a headline, as the entire slide. A day later, without any warning, all these presenters had to sit at the comprehension test. So not the audience, yeah, the people who actually built the slides. And the argument headline group, so the ones that had only one sentence on a slide, scored significantly higher. So basically it turns out that the moment you have to synthesize your points in one single sentence, you actually end up understanding a lot more of the context around it. So think about this next time you create a client or a pitch deck. So ask yourself, what is the one thing that this slide should say? It's not just a design decision, it's a strategic decision. This is super important, and I'll come back to the stats. Hear information on its own, and you'll remember about 10% of it 3 days later. Pair it with a relevant image, and that jumps to 65%. It's not a small bump. We're talking about 6.5 times more memorability from one single decision to add one piece of visual that is relevant to the text. There is one word that matters a lot in this context, and that is relevant. So a stock photo of a handshake in front of a laptop isn't relevant if you're talking about a certain topic. That's decoration. And decorations are okay, but it's worth knowing that they can cost processing space, and they give nothing back. A diagram that shows how your framework connects, that is what makes the data land. And especially now, when you can literally go and ask your AI to build that diagram or chart straight from your raw data. And that's the moment you've made your slide so much more efficient and effective. So in one study, 30 people were fitted with eye trackers and shown a series of slides, each designed completely differently. When a slide had a single point on it, they read every single word, full attention, nothing missed. But as you add more, attention drops. And what happens is when a slide is overloaded with both dense text and a complex diagram, the engagement collapses. And basically nothing gets absorbed from the diagram at all. So you're probably wondering, how can you apply this to your work? Summarize your concept in one sentence as a kind of title slide. Don't add your full diagram. Instead, follow the summary of your point and create leaner slides to go into small details of the diagram. And you can send the diagram as supporting documentation when you send the presentation. Break the diagram into digestible chunks. This is how you do it. When someone reads text off your slide, while you are also speaking, what happens is they are running two verbal streams through the same channel in working memory, and one loses always. You have probably experienced this as well. You sat in a presentation and found yourself reading the slide instead of listening. And it's not rude. It is actually how the brain works. So the fix is not to speak less, it's to actually put less on the slide, like I've already mentioned before. As a practical rule, if you are going to say it out loud, it does not need to be on the slide. That is what speaker notes are for. The average adult reads at a speed of about 200 words a minute. The average presenter speaks at about 100 to 150 words per minute. So basically what happens is when you have a text-heavy slide and you end up reading it, and the presenter is also reading the slide, it is as if you had the same song in both ears, but in one of the headphones, it is a little bit delayed. That does not help. It creates a jam in your brain, and basically you make your information less effective. If your slides contain everything the audience needs, you don't need a presenter, you need a printer. You've effectively created a document that you can send out without you needing to be in the room and give that presentation. So the words on screen shouldn't be the words coming out of your mouth. They should do different jobs. You have to speak the argument and show the evidence. You should never read a slide. If you have to read a slide, export it as a PDF and just send it, email it to your client or your prospect instead of presenting it. People don't read, and this is something very important, and I've already mentioned it in the UI UX copywriting webinar that I did a couple of weeks ago. No matter how much we want them to, they scan. And this is coming from the Nielsen Norman Group, super big study around eye tracking, and there's so much data on this. Basically what happens is the eyes hit the heading and they skip the body. They go to the next heading, they skip the body, and repeat. In all the heat maps, it looks like a cake. So you've got stripes of attention on the headings, then blank space where the body copy is, then again, a stripe of attention in the heading. And this isn't an attention span problem. It's not a phone problem. It's also not a generational problem, because it would be very easy to say that. It is just how the visual system works. We're pattern matchers, and we like to skip anything that looks even remotely like noise. And on most slides, actually, it is the body copy that reads as noise. Let's look at this headline. Which of these is more likely to be memorable? The left one is a label. It tells you the topic. It tells you what it is. The one on the right is an argument. It tells you the thought. And basically for the 80% of the room who will read only the heading, the left side, point one has taught them absolutely nothing. The right side has given them the entire point. And here's the thing, the argument headline is not necessarily harder to write. It is just the sentence you would say to a colleague if you walk in the corridor or jump on a quick call and you had exactly 10 seconds to explain what the slide is about. And you can take this as an exercise for the next time you build a presentation. This is something that you can apply. You can still use the label, but as a super title, it helps kind of signal what it is. There's a difference in hierarchies here because the super title is small, usually capital letters, so it's also more readable. And the argument needs to be bold, has space to breathe, needs to be memorable. And here's the test. When you finish any deck, what you can do is delete absolutely all the body copy that you've got, all the bullet points, and just look at your headings in order. Yep, so take slide 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, read the headlines. Do they actually make a complete argument from start to finish? Could someone who reads your slides understand what the presentation is about or what the story is? If the answers are yes, then you have built a presentation. And the body and images, they're just supporting evidence. The argument needs to be able to stand on its own. It's simple, right? Your presentations just with a heading. It also saves so much time. And remember one of the studies that we looked at a little bit earlier, where if people wrote their argument sentence, they understood the topic better. It is exactly the same thing here. You're basically forcing every heading to state the point, and you will find the slides that don't have a point yet, and you can scrutinize them and make them better, or delete them altogether. I've also done this in this presentation. And when in doubt, what you can certainly do is take all the body text, all those bullet points, all those paragraphs of copy, and move them inside your speaker notes and use them as guidance. There's a pattern in memory that has replicated endlessly, and it's basically a super settled study. We remember what comes first, and we remember what comes last. And the middle is where information goes to be forgotten. In experience design, this is called the peak and end rule, and that's why a lot of experiences are designed around the start. There's a lot of focus around the starting point, all the beginning touch points, and the end. So you have exactly the same curve every time. If you have a strong start and a strong end, flat, weak middle, doesn't matter however long the middle is. Now think about how most decks are built. What you are effectively doing is you have an introduction, and you have a conclusion, potentially, maybe. I've seen lots of presentations without an introduction and without a conclusion. And then the important stuff is actually sitting in the middle. So you've got slides through, I don't know, 4 to 14 are all the important things that you are trying to communicate in this presentation. And this is exactly where the brain keeps the least. This is not a content problem. It's a sequencing problem, and the fix is very, very simple. Whatever you need your audience to remember, say it first. Build the evidence in the middle, and say it again at the end, but in different words. Your opening is your most valuable memory real estate. If you spend time on housekeeping, on a lengthy agenda, you've wasted that super precious moment. So instead, set the scene. Agenda slides, not needed in a presentation. Are they really needed in a presentation? It's not a table of contents in a document. Again, if you need a table of contents, it means that perhaps it should be a document and not a presentation. You can, of course, cover out loud what you're going to cover, but an agenda doesn't need a slide. And your ending matters just as much. The last thing you say is the thing that people are most likely to remember because of how short-term memory works. So focus on ending on the thing you want them to remember. And open with the point. Build the case in the middle, close with the point again. It's not repetition, it's architecture. Everything we covered today points here. 2 ideas on a slide is not really efficiency, it's about splitting attention, filling working memory, and adding more cognitive load. So this means that you can have more slides than you've been taught, as long as they are simple, clean, and communicate the idea clearly. There's a quiet anxiety in slide building, and that is around sparse slides, looking like you didn't do enough. You've got one headline, one image, and just those 2 together, it kind of looks lazy, it looks thin, undercooked, like you ran out of time. But in reality, the research says the exact opposite. A sparse slide is harder to build than a dense one. Like we spoke before, writing one headline that captures the whole point means you have to know exactly what that point is. And the bullet list lets you dodge that question because it's easy to explain a point with multiple bullet points. It doesn't force you to synthesize an idea into just one single sentence. Density is easy. Clarity, is always hard. And in reality, the presenters whose slides look the simplest have usually done the most thinking. They decided what the slide is for, what the purpose is, and they cut everything else that felt like noise, that didn't serve the argument. So one idea, one headline. This is a really important rule. This presentation has around 317 words on the screen. You have been sitting here for half an hour, almost half an hour, and the words on the screen are not where the presentation lived. This conversation, me going through the various studies, is where it lived. Everything you needed to hear, the context, the evidence, and the stories, not much of that was inside the slides. It was in my notes and in my stories. And that is where it actually belongs. Speaker notes are not a safety net for when you forget your lines. They are where the thinking goes. And one of the most important things that we need to focus more on these days, especially since a lot of tools that help us build presentations have really neat speaker note features. A lot of effort should actually go into building those so that they can guide you through your presentation. And if you write speaker notes properly, you will never have to put a paragraph on a slide again. So remember, clean slide, strong headline, everything else is in the notes. And you, as a presenter, are effectively the road of the presentation. And please take this as the most important finding of this webinar. Your slides are not the presentation. It is you who are presenting, who makes the presentation. Thank you.